The Love Life and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. If you know what to do, but can't figure out why you're just not doing it, this is the right podcast for you. I'm your host, Advanced Certified Weight and Life Coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to think and eat like a normal eater, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. Welcome to episode 56. I hope you've had some time before I get on with the topic for today to listen a couple of times to episode 55, Secrets to Eating Less, Losing Weight, and Feeling Satisfied. That podcast really requires some time and, like I mentioned in it, lots of practice. So just because I've come out with a new podcast topic doesn't mean it's time to move on to something new. Like if your primary focus is losing weight, spend some time with 55 before you change focus to other things. So like with all my podcasts, there are some foundational concepts for weight loss. The episodes that are foundational, I put in my book, right? Because they're the things that we need to turn to over and over again if we're not quite able to consistently lose weight, or if we're gaining and losing. It means that some of those foundational aspects are not in place. And 55 Secrets to Eating Less and Feeling Satisfied is something that I felt as though needed just a finer tooth comb. So if you have not listened to it, please go back and listen to it. It's going to be your ace for losing weight and really figuring out what your protocol is to find physically and emotionally satisfied with eating a little bit less. Today, well, let me say this first too. Most of my podcasts, especially the ones that are foundational, I write some notes and then I might like look at just general main ideas and I kind of wing it. I don't write a whole script. And for this one, I I made the scarcest of notes. Um, and so we'll see what happens. We'll see how I do. Hopefully I can come across in an organized way to let you know while this topic isn't foundational, it is important. And it's like one of these like underdog skills, like undervalued skills, not only in weight loss, but in life to help you get results and level up your results in any area of your life. So it's about listening. Many of us have heard the term passive listening versus active listening. And it's important because, listening is one of these things that as human beings with an evolved brain, what I mean by that is we have evolved this part of our prefrontal cortex, the manager part of our brain, the part that can think on purpose, the part that can strategize, the part that can return to actions to achieve long-term goals. It controls a bunch of things that we can do on purpose that aren't sort of automatic or like hardwired into like our primal self. So we can, if you think about it, we can think on purpose. This is a uniquely human skill. I mean, maybe other animals can think on purpose. I think my dog, she's passed now, but my German Shepherd was really smart, and I could see her thinking on purpose. But human beings are like a species that we can take this far beyond what other mammals can do. So there's this automatic part of our brain that just thinks and reacts to the world. We all kind of grow up from a child just reacting to how we feel and reacting to the inputs that come to us. If we're wet, if our diaper's wet, we cry, right? If we're hungry, we cry. It's a response. There's an input and there's a response. So That's the brain thinking in a reactive way. And then we kind of learn how to, at some point, hopefully, override automaticity in our thinking. And we can kind of rewind and decide, I don't want to think that anymore. Here's what I want to think instead. Or that's kind of a bullshit thing to think. Do I really want to think that? So this is thinking about thinking. This is like what I learned as metacognition. It's like watching you think as you think and then deciding if you want to do it differently. So thinking is one way that we can do things on purpose with our special part of our brain. We can also feel on purpose. I was thinking about what is an example of like someone trying to literally feel with their senses on purpose. And the first thing that came to my mind is like when you're trying to have an orgasm, right? Like we're focusing, we're trying to feel good, we're trying to allow it to happen. It might happen, it might not. But that's a good example of feeling on purpose, or let's say when you're in love with somebody and you're just really like marinating around in this like we're juicing up the love, right? Like we're just focusing on it, we're allowing the momentum of that feeling that we feel as love um kind of be primary and grow because it feels so good. Okay, so that's feeling. We can think, we can feel. We can also do on purpose. Um, Many of you who are familiar with, cognitive behavioral conditioning, which is how I learned life coaching. All that means is it's this idea of human behavior where what we think creates how we feel, and how we feel creates what we do or don't do from that. And, this is well documented and used in all kinds of behavioral sciences and such. I mean, well, that's how I learned it as kind of like textbook human behavior, but there are exceptions. And I always felt it was really interesting that in life coaching, at least how I was taught in the life coach school, it was just like given that however you feel affects what you do or don't do. And it's not always like a linear thing, right? Like, let's say you're having an argument with somebody and they're really like, when you get so mad, you start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to punch this person out if they don't stop, or I'm going to run away, or I'm going to do something, but you don't do it. So you have this ability to do on purpose, regardless of what you think or do. Sometimes this is often noted in news stories when um, you're in a place, say that you're in danger, and all of your social conditioning says, well, don't stay. Like you feel weird, but you might have like a flash of insight that you're not safe around this person or something. Um, and you might stay and you might not. You might listen to that gut sense and do on purpose. So we can think on purpose, we can feel on purpose, we can do on purpose. We can also see on purpose. We kind of everyone's had the experience of looking at a photo and thinking it was something else, right? We can even taste on purpose. Well, let me go back to seeing on purpose. Sometimes when we're expecting somebody to come into the room, we'll think that person is somebody else. That's like that's automatic thinking. And you might be like, "Hey, Bob." And then you're like, "Oh, wait, that's not Bob." And then you see the real person, right? That's not automatic seeing. It's seeing on purpose. Even tasting on purpose. If you've ever taken a bite of something and you thought it was one kind of food, but it turned out you were mistaken, it might take a few seconds for you to actually realize that the taste in your mouth is not what you automatically expected it to be. Then you start to taste what it actually is on purpose. So I've always found this very interesting. And from the time I was really young, I was aware that I could think on purpose. I was very, and I think this has benefited me my whole life. I don't really know what created it, but, I just was very reluctant to just believe anything that anybody said to me. And my Sunday school teacher was not very happy with me. I was always a questioner. I wanted to understand why people came to the conclusions that they came to. Um, Oftentimes, the parental answer of because I said so, if it didn't make sense to me, I couldn't get behind it. So, I think a lot of this just has to do with personality type as well. And one isn't better than the other because certainly questioning everything can be exhausting. Believability can even be something that you do on purpose or not. I choose to believe this or I choose not to. And in my coaching, I have to say, I do see this distinction and it really hoses a lot of my clients when they don't question beliefs, which are just thoughts that you've thought so often that they feel like facts, but they're not facts. And a healthy habit of believing on purpose or questioning your beliefs and discerning, is this belief helping me or is it hurting me? And why do I believe the things that I believe? Why do I do the things that I do? Why do I overeat? There's something really helpful that can help you when you take a high level view like this and you use your ability to think, feel, do on purpose and you kind of question the automaticity of your life. This can really help you with weight loss because if you have weight to lose and you're not at your happy weight, we know that you have a habit of overeating. And what I know as a coach is that your habit of overeating is serving you. You're using it for a reason. It may not be obvious, it may not be logical, but it's serving a purpose. You are logical and you do things that work for you. And if you can apply that in your relationship to others or even in relationship to yourself, it can be the ace skill that you apply to try to understand your own behavior. Because when you understand why you do what you do, then you can really question the effectiveness of your strategies. So, like even this morning, I was coaching my client, and I said, I often use this example. Like, oftentimes they'll be telling me like their habit of like fuck it eating at night or um, overeating their lunch at work. And they're just telling it to me like it's a fact. Right. And it is a fact because it did happen. But what I mean when I say they're believing it's a fact is that they're believing that it's effective. And what I know is that it overeating might be effective in terms of, I don't know, increasing your dopamine if you're low, a way to feel good, a way to distract yourself, right? But a lot of the reason why so many of us overeat is because we're getting our needs met in a really shitty way. Like the eating itself isn't fixing the underlying issue that remains, whether you eat or you don't eat. And that work is deeper work. So, how do you find out? How do you find out what's really going on with you? Well, the first thing is to stop telling yourself that eating makes you feel better. It doesn't. Eating is food going down your throat. You feeling better means that what you were feeling before is masked by your eating. But the original feeling that you're trying to get away from or feel better about still remains. You're just temporarily distracted or avoiding that experience by your eating. So the first step is to no longer tell yourself that eating makes you feel better. Call it what it is. Eating is a distraction from how I feel right now. That's interesting. Then what becomes the greater focus is, how was I feeling? Let's get to the root of the issue that eating is just a symptom of. Okay. So, the one thing that I wanted to talk to you about more in depth is about listening on purpose. Because this is a skill that can really reveal so much about your own relationship to yourself and your relationships to other people. Listening, like I mentioned at the beginning, can be active or passive. And, we can just kind of listen to listen in an automatic way that just feels like we're just listening and it's effortless. But that's not exactly what's happening. Usually, take an example of you speaking with, let's say, your partner about household stuff. Um, the kitchen was a mess this morning. Let's heighten it a little bit. We're going to heighten the conversation. So when you're listening to your partner about why the kitchen wasn't cleaned up the night before, when you say you're just listening to what they say, usually what's happening is you're hearing what you expect to hear from them, that old story, because this is probably not a conversation you've had for the first time. Likely, this is a conversation that is a version of many that you've had. And the way that our brain works is that with everything, it predicts the meaning of what other people are saying when you're listening. And it's so how what you make the other person's words mean is filtered by this previous expectation of what to expect. It's kind of like that Rorschach test. The ink blot test where they show you like a weird picture and they're like, "Well, what do you see?" And what they found is that what different people see is more a function of what they're used to seeing, or if they've seen something like that before, because the brain puts its past experiences to work in the context of the environment and the current situation you're in. And it will tell you that this is the truth of what you're hearing. But oftentimes we know, if you have siblings, this is probably very familiar to you. What two people hear the same other person say can be two totally different meanings. And so this is where listening on purpose, the subset of skills of this can really help you break through your filters of your past in order to really hear not only your own thinking in your head for the truth of what it is, the facts of what it is, before you put your own meaning on it. Because if we're just using our past to create facts about what we hear ourselves say or other people say, then the truth of what we experience with our listening skills, internal and external, is just a version of our past. And that's a handicap because let's take weight loss. I mean, I said this is applicable in all areas of life, but let's take weight loss. If you hear an urge, oh fuck it, I've had such a hard day. I know I've had enough to eat for dinner. I'm not really hungry, but I'm really thinking I want ice cream because that'll make this day better. If you don't really use active listening to understand what you're hearing from your brain in that moment, you will always get the ice cream. And you don't have a shot in hell of changing your habits around food. So I want you to become like that questioner that I saw myself as when I was young in Sunday school, questioning all the beliefs that they told me were true about my religion growing up and what I was expected to believe. So don't believe everything that your brain thinks. Listen actively to what's being said, whether it's your own thoughts or for other people. So this is really the art of separating fact from fiction. And then know that your brain will try to make whatever you heard mean some version of what you've always made it mean. So what you can do, and Byron Katie is the master at this, is you can flip it upside down and say, well, I'm used to making my urges for ice cream at the end of a long day when I'm not hungry for ice cream mean it would make my day better. But what if it's actually true that always eating ice cream at the end of a hard day never makes my day better? It actually is one more piece of evidence that my day sucks and that I'm in the cycle of reacting to how I feel with food that keeps me locked in a prison of using food to feel better. So, active listening will be helped if you can do a few things. Like I mentioned before, number one is listen with the knowledge that your brain, what it wants to make what you hear mean, is an unreliable narrator. That your first pass meaning of whatever you hear is going to be a function of what you've always thought. And then ask yourself, so let that play out. That's fine. That's how brains work. But then I want you to look at your thoughts. I've called this thoughts on a platter before. Pretend they're like thoughts on a platter, like, when you're at a wedding and they pass hors d'oeuvres around during the cocktail hour. Look at the thoughts and say, does making what I heard mean what I think it first means at the first pass? Is that helpful? What's inevitable that I do or don't do if I choose to believe this? I've mentioned to you all before when I decided to stop drinking. One of the most helpful things I did was that I stopped believing that my urge to drink meant that I would feel better. What I started making it mean instead, see, I inserted a new meaning to what I was hearing when I had the urge to drink, was that if I had the wine, I was drinking a glass of neurotoxin, which is not untrue. Anything else I was believing that it would give me was just a function of my past thinking. And as long as I believed it would help me, I knew I would continue to drink. So really this is about falling out of love with giving food the magical qualities that you've been used to giving it. Really listening to your thinking, listening to what other people say, and really looking at the words. Like, what else could this mean? What do I want this to mean? What meaning do I want to give this? I'll give you an example and I'll go back to drinking. When I first quit drinking, of course, a lot of my friends were asking me questions about why I was no longer drinking alcohol. And not so much my close friends, but other people, acquaintances, people I didn't know that well, when they heard that I wasn't drinking, I would get a lot of like feedback about or like justifications about why they like to drink and why they don't understand how I can do it or um things like that. And some of that stuff was a little judgmental. It didn't make me feel great on first pass when I was listening to it. But on second pass, I made it mean something else. And this is one of my favorite thoughts to think on purpose, which is they're so confused about me. And that's true because not everyone has to understand why you do what you do. You can even use this with your own automatic thinking, your own automatic urges for food. Go back to the example of eating at night ice cream after a shit day. You could just think, oh, there's that urge for ice cream. There's my brain trying to fix me feeling frustrated with my day. But what if I just allowed myself to feel the frustration? Now, if this is a consistent thing, frustration every day after work, or feeling like high anxiety after your days and using food to kind of come back down to home base, allowing the frustration is going to put pressure on you to solve the core issue of why you're feeling that way at the end of your day. That's the true thing that needs addressing. Why are you so frustrated and what can you do about it? Because when what you do right now with your current habits is more rewarding than what you think you could do if you changed, then you won't change. But when the idea of what you could do instead feels more enticing than what you're doing now, then you will change. So you really have to build the case for change. And you can do this with your active listening. Because if you just automatically listen, make meaning from what you hear in your mind or other people, you're just going to show up as the same person, which is fine. But you're here because you're talking about weight loss. And so much of weight loss is questioning what we think, hearing it in a new way, thinking on purpose. Maybe sometimes just choosing to do things differently, even though we have the same urges. Maybe you're not ready to change your situation at work that leaves you frustrated all day. What if you're just like, well, I can't change anything about it. So if I choose to stay in my job, then I just choose to be frustrated, but I'm not going to eat over it. I'm not going to eat over it. So, and then change is possible. Okay. So that's active listening versus passive listening. So it's an active skill in that how you do your listening determines what your inner world and perspective is that you are left with. And you need a change in perspective and you need a change in how you hear yourself and other people if you want things to change. Okay. So, another thing that can help you with active listening is to seek understanding. Like I mentioned before, I think my personality type that is wanting to understand how things work can really help you. Like like I like to think there's a solution for everything. Like that's never been hard for me to figure out. I remember in some of my most frustrating times as a teenager, feeling really unhappy in my hometown, like really unhappy. And I was just thinking, I got to figure this out. Like, I need a break. I was like 16. And I happened to get invited to this resort area and with a friend on her dad's boat. And we happened to meet some acquaintances from the high school who were older than us. And I saw they were working at this resort all summer, away from their house, away from their family, away from the hometown. And I said, that's what I want. I had no idea how I was going to make that happen, but that was it. So, but the only way that I made that connection to find that option for myself, which by the way did come to pass and was the best thing I ever did for myself at that age, was because I knew there's a solution for me out here. So I tell you this because there is a solution for your weight loss. You just haven't found a way to kind of like get your needs met without overeating. That's your job to figure out. But when you put it out in the world, I'm looking for this solution. I've got to figure out how to be with my frustration or fix my frustration at work so I'm not eating over it at night. You'll figure that out. Like your brain will stop going back into the past and regurgitating what it's always done, and it will start to work for you. I mean, this is the beauty of the brain. Yeah, when it thinks automatically, it's always a version of what's come to pass from the past. But the beautiful part about thinking, feeling, doing, tasting on purpose, and hearing, listening on purpose is that it can work for you in the present moment to project into the future that you want. So many of us are just not utilizing our brains. We're at the effect of our automatic thinking. I mean, I can't tell you how many times really smart people over the past, I've been practicing yoga now for 23 years. Really smart people get to the end of a yoga class and you get to the final pose, which is called Shavasana. The whole reason to do the postures on the mat in the first place is to practice focus, which is what I'm talking about. Focus on your listening, focusing on your hearing, focusing on what you see, focus on what you taste, right? And then when you lay down at the end, you don't focus, you just don't think. It's a rest from thinking. And you can't be a focused person changing your life and doing that really hard brain work unless you also have time when you don't think at all. So many of us don't give ourselves this break. This is why meditation or something that is non-cognitive, when you don't give yourself time to lay down in that final pose, metaphorically or in yoga class, you're just exhausting your brain. Your brain is on duty all the time. And then you go to sleep and then it dreams. Like, when is it supposed to rest? You have to have both. You have to have a way to kind of like let everything settle in and just watch your brain. Like, it'll think when you tell it not to think on purpose. You just watch it. But you're not the thoughts that you think automatically. That's just the machine working automatic. And if you can do this often enough and not be bothered by your thinking, you just watch your thinking rather than react to what you think or react to what you hear, then that space gives you the control to take the wheel should you want to and just say, I'm not thinking about it that way anymore. What else could I think? What other perspective could help me? So this is something that I've encouraged you to do in previous podcasts. So I'm not going to get into meditation too much anymore, but safe to say, if I'm going to ask you to think on purpose, feel on purpose, and especially listen on purpose to your thoughts, then you've got to also build into your day, for the love of God, time to not think, because you need to have both in order to have balance in your life. So much of 3 p.m. snacking and the vast majority of everyone I've talked to in my over 10,000 hours is about a desperate need for a break, to just not think. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want you to consider building your skill set of listening on purpose, questioning what you hear, flipping it on its like opposite to see if that could also be helpful. And then whatever you hear on purpose, if you decide you want to make what you heard in your own thinking or from other people mean something different, try it. This is your life. If you don't start listening on purpose, then all you're doing is thinking about life based on what other people told you is true. And the conditioning that you've taken in your whole life is just running the show of your life. So to be truly free, we have to be able to listen actively, use discernment, and then make what we hear mean something that serves us in the life and the person that we want to be. Okay. A little esoteric. But hopefully it was helpful. Um, enjoy your active listening. See if there's been any times in your life. Here's a good homework assignment. Has there ever been a time in your life when you thought you heard something and you were totally wrong and it had big consequences in your life? Has there ever been a time in your life when someone misunderstood what you were trying to say? Because there's the words we say, and then there's what we make it mean, whether to others or to ourselves in our own heads. So how you listen and what you make it mean makes all the difference to set you up for the perspective that will help you get where you want to go in life. Okay. So visit me over on Instagram, do your homework, and let me know how you find active listening. I love that Benjamin Franklin said, the most interesting person in the room is the one that says the least. Deeply listening to other people without your own agenda about what you want to make their words mean is such a great skill. I use it in coaching every day. I've learned to just 100% focus on what someone is saying to me and why they're saying it. It gives me such a deep understanding of that person and why they do what they do. And then I'm able to help them see that. Imagine if you could do that for yourself. Active listening can give you that. It's such a gift. It's something you can work at every day in little ways, whether you track your own thoughts in your head or you really actively listen in a new way to the important people in your life, your boss, your coworkers. It can be revolutionary. So have fun with it. Stay focused, and so long.
Hey, if this episode resonated for you, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's HBEARDSLEY.com/subscribe and get on the list. You'll get a free gift, periodic coaching, plus advance notice of in-person events and workshops.